With all the precincts reporting, Christian McCaffrey has signed a monster extension with the 49ers. And he is going to be a Niner for the foreseeable future. Basically, he's making $19 million a year. He was already the number one highest paid running back in football, and now he's just that much more of the highest paid running back in football. The Niners give him 38 million reasons to show up to minicamp, as Kyle Posey wrote on Niners Nation. He's the highest paid running back in pro football. It's a 2-year extension that averages 19 million per year. Adam Schefter added that CMC added or will receive an additional 8 million over what he was initially scheduled to make. Tom Pelissero says it's going to be a $38 million extension. So $4 million. He's now $4 million higher than the next running back. He was already the highest paid running back in football on an annual basis. And so there you go. He's under contract for with the 49ers through the 2027 season, though that 27 or 2026 season, I believe, is a team option. Raj, what did you think of the story of the day? CMC, a lot of people were wondering, was he going to skip minicamp if he did, or mandatory minicamp if he did? It was going to be a story. Was he unhappy with his contract? Well, I guess he probably was, because they addressed the contract. What do you think of the biggest story in Ninerland today is that McCaffrey's locked up for a couple more years and got a little bit more cash. What do you think of it?
I loved it, man. I love CMC on the Niners. He is him, as the young bucks will say. He's him, Larry. He's that guy. Like, he's transformed this offense. You can sit here and rattle all the stats out. We know them all. Offensive player of the year. He's the best running back in the NFL. One of the best running backs in, if he continues to do what he's doing in NFL history. He's getting to that point. He's setting records. He's been on the Niners for 2 years. He's got 39 total touchdowns with us. The guy is flat out amazing, well deserved. If you really think about it, still underpaid. I mean, with the amount of work he does, what he does for this offense, you kind of argue that he's underpaid, but it's well deserved money. The running backs have been undervalued, and I'm happy for him. I think this is the perfect fit as a running back for the 49ers. This is like the guy Kyle's been searching at running back for years, and he found his guy, right? And he's just a workhorse, but he could do so much for this team. So I was happy. I was excited. I know there's been a lot of like talk. Is he unhappy? I don't necessarily think he was unhappy, but I think he realized, like, I'm your offense. We saw, a couple years back they traded for him, and they had mentioned, hey, the contract, we'll figure that out as the time comes, because he was getting paid the Carolina money. He never really sat down with the 49ers to talk numbers and cents. So, he didn't have guaranteed money really left. And I think the Niners did him a solid and say, hey, look, you've really worked your ass off for us. We're going to pay you. So I like that. And 2027, this guy's going to be a Niner for years to come. I think it's a great move. He's a very, humble player. He's a leader in the locker room. He had nothing but good things to say today about the organization. So I'm happy for him. And I'm happy for the running backs, because this is a guy that increased the value. So running backs all around the world better send Christian McCaffrey a Christmas card, a box of chocolates, a good wedding present, something, because this man just got them a little bit more money in their pockets moving forward. So happy for Christian McCaffrey today.
Exactly. He did good thing for the rest of the running backs. But, going back to the trade, I mean, this is one of the best trades in Niner history. They traded a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5 over 2 drafts for Christian McCaffrey. And, McCaffrey has stepped in and has become an MVP candidate, and is upped his game and has played his best football. And yeah, he didn't want to complain because he doesn't want to go anywhere, but he probably wanted more guaranteed money because the guaranteed money on his deal had run out. So here are the particulars. This year he was due to make 12 million in cash. Now he's going to make 15.5 million, maybe up to 16. Next year he was scheduled to make 12.2 million in cash. Now it's going to be 15.7 million in cash, possibly as high as 16.2. And then 2026, there's now a new $12 million salary for him in 2026, 17 million in 2027. That could go as high as 17.5. The Niners save roughly 8.6 million in cap space over the next 4 years after this extension. So it's very team friendly in that sense. They create immediate cap room and keep their best player under contract. His cap hit for this year was scheduled to be 14.14 million. It's now 4.56 million if we assume the 49ers at least added one void year for the max cap spread. This is according to the article I'm reading on Niners Nation. So, but there you go. Their best player is in the fold, best offensive players in the fold, and they created a little cap room and got him a little extra money, and you couldn't take care of you can't go taking care of other guys in the room if you don't take care of a guy who's an MVP candidate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's who he is. So to me, the fact that they took care of him, I mean, this was the no brainer. They had to take care of him, and they did, and I'm glad that they did.
Me too.
I asked him today because Bobby T suggested that he was obsessing on his fumble in the Super Bowl, and I asked him about it, and he didn't want to talk about it. And I didn't think he would want to talk about it. He had a great year. He said he doesn't obsess on the past, that he always looks forward and doesn't think backward. But
Christian, you had an amazing year last year, but it's been said that you've obsessed a little bit on the fumble in the Super Bowl. Is that an accurate description? How do you view it, and how has it served as a motivator?
Yeah, I mean, I don't harp on one play, bad or good, especially going into a new year, completely new year. You just got to focus on one day at a time and just stick to your process, whatever that may be. But last year's last year, whether we won or lost. We're deep into the offseason now, ready for this next year.
What do you think? Is that, you think, 100% truthful, or is that just kind of his public stance? How much do you think that fumble in the Super Bowl actually does haunt him?
I'm sure it haunts him every day. I'm sure it eats at him. I'm sure. I mean, he's human. He's got emotions. He watched the game, but at the same time, he's got to move past it and kind of head forward. You can't sit there and dwell on the past every day. So I understand that. I think publicly, yeah, he's gonna say that. But if he comes out and says I'm gonna dwell on it, he's going to dwell on it because I'm sure it eats at him. But mentally in the game, you do have to kind of sweep that stuff and move on. So I see where he's coming from in that standpoint. I mean, we don't want to beat a dead horse, right? So I feel like he is trying to move past it. But media is going to ask him these questions, and yeah, he's going to say, "Hey, look, man, let's move past it," or "I'm not thinking about it." And maybe he's saying that because mentally he does need to move past it. And it was a horrible mistake, but it wasn't the only reason that cost the Niners a game. There was a multitude of factors that definitely was not a good factor. I hate even thinking about it. So Larry, let's move past it, my boy. I will say this though.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the contract. I like how the Niners handled it very quietly. Like there was no ruckus. There was people that were kind of speculating. Oh, is there a contract situation? A couple weeks ago, they asked Kyle. He says, "Well, I can't tell you why he's not showing up." So they kind of kept it under. I like how they kind of just was like, you know what? We're not going to make this a situation. We don't want the drama. We don't want. We're going to take care of it. And Chris McCaffrey today said, "Hey, look, both sides were very professional. They handled their business. He got what he deserved. We're going to move past." And now Chris McCaffrey is taken care of. Now they can focus on the BA situation.
Well, and what I like too about the way Shanahan handled that, he wasn't a stooge, right? He didn't sit there and say, there's absolutely nothing going on with his contract situation. He said, I guess, well, he's not here now. We'll find out when the mandatory rolls around if it's, if that's an issue or not. Kyle knows he knows the contractual situations of his superstar players. He knew that they were hammering out a deal with McCaffrey and would probably get it done before the mandatory minicamp. But instead of just saying, it's definitely not his contract and that's not why he's missing the voluntary, he didn't say that. He's like, well, we'll find out, Yeah. So in other words, he doesn't have to be a liar. He doesn't have to be a stooge. He can just kind of, he has more information behind the scenes than we have. And he just said, hey, kind of kicked the can down the road, gave them a couple extra weeks to get the deal done. They get the deal done, and he's there today at minicamp. Yeah. He's a great player. They used him. Here's one of the things I wanted to share with you because I asked Kyle this question today.
You asked him a lot today.
I did ask him a lot today. I was active. I
liked it.
I was engaged.
I heard your voice a lot. I was like, Larry, crushing today.
Okay, this is the question I asked him. Okay, so this is the question I asked him about CMC. CMC had 339 touches this year. Now, Earl Campbell averaged 388 touches in the 3-year span in the 80s, and then, to put this in perspective, but that's
a
Earl.
lot.
339 is a ton. And I asked him about it. I said, he had 339 touches. How do you feel about that usage? Do you want that number to go up or down? He had a really interesting answer, I thought. Here's Shanahan for earlier today on what's an ideal number of touches for CMC coming up this year.
Kyle, CMC had 339 touches last year. What did you think of that usage? And this year, do you see that number going up, or you think it's more likely to go down?
I don't think it always needs to be that case with all the runs. Like we got guys that can run the ball and stuff. We got to protect Christian from himself. He doesn't like to ever come out, no matter what the situation is. And I do think that someone could protect him with more. When you are such a threat in the pass game, it's a little bit different, and that's when you get touches from a running back. A lot of times you're the last choice, just everyone's deep and you throw it to a check down. So like halfbacks can get 6 targets in a game without one play called for them, just because they're in checkdowns a lot. And so how do we feel about those touches? Man, I'm glad he was out there for that check down. That means no one's around and he's getting up the field and he's as good of a threat on a check down as there can be. But if he's just taking the wear and tear with 20 carries and stuff every game, and he's definitely good enough to do that, and he's proved he can stay healthy, but I'd like to take some of that off of him and give it to other guys also.
Yeah, so that was the answer that I really wanted to hear. That's a lot of touches, man. 339. And let's be honest, part of the reason I think the guy fumbled in the Super Bowl is just fatigue and just usage. I think he was used a lot. I don't think he was near 100% come Super Bowl Sunday. I'd love to see him get, even if it was the same number of touches, Raj, but if it was a few, let's say he has 325 touches this year, but he has less carries, and they can give some of those carries to Garendo and give some of those carries maybe to Cody Schrader or maybe to Debo or Pearsall or, Mason. I'd like to see Mason get a lot more carries. Mitchell, if he's there. To me, that was music to my ears. I don't mind the touches if you're throwing it to him as a, in the backfield as a check down, because he's probably the best check down there is. But if you could take away some of those runs and try to not let him beat up his body so much and try to preserve him a little bit for January football, I think that might be in their best interest. And they seem like they've got the rock. It's not Dallas, This isn't a team where they don't have no running backs, and it's like, well, we got to run our main guy over and over and over again. We don't have anybody else. The Niners have tons of depth. They have an abundance of running back riches. All I'm saying is let's utilize that depth and get CMC to December and January in a way fresher mode than he was last year. I think that's one of their keys for the year.
I agree. And the thing is, it's not just, obviously, like Kyle said, he's on the field, he's a threat. And it's hard to take a guy like that out, and he doesn't want to take himself out. So I get it. He could be a decoy. You don't always have to give him the ball. Like he says, the threat of him having that check down pass is like keeps the defense honest, right? But you don't have to give him the HB draws. You don't have to give him the dive plays. Like, let Mason do that a couple times. Let the rookie earn his keep. Let Garendo take a dive play or something, because those are the plays that cause the wear and tear on CMC. And I agree with you. In February, we want him to be a little bit more fresh coming into the season, because it's a grind. That's why a lot of running backs don't get paid. There's such a high level of instability because can they get hurt? They take so many hits. You don't need to do that when you're CMC, because you do have so many good running backs on this team. I get it. He's so good. He's a threat. But take a little load off of him, because I remember towards the end of the season, he's on the sideline. He's getting like treatment on his calf. They're like massaging his leg. And I'm like freaking out. Oh my God, is CMC going to be okay? And I feel like you're right. He was probably a little fatigued towards the end of the season. They ran this man like nobody's business. 339 touches, Larry. That's a lot for anybody.
It's a ton, man. It's a ton. And most of them were carries. He had, I think was like 280 or something like that carries. He had a ton of carries. Too many carries. Hand the ball to Mason, hand the ball to Garendo, hand the ball to Schrader. Use your other running backs. Get to January football with McCaffrey fresh, and your chances of beating Kansas City go way, way up. Yeah, you got to have that cat fresh. He's got to be fresh.
He's too good.
And he wasn't this last year. I think, he would never make that excuse, but I'll make it for him.